Hello, I'm Will. I'm nearing the end of my second working holiday visa here in Australia, and in this video I'm going to explain some of the key mistakes that I made moving to Australia so that hopefully you can avoid them at all costs. By the end of this video you should hopefully have the answer to a couple of questions that are plaguing you. Should I get a job straight away? How do I get a job? Where should I live? What's the housing situation like? And ultimately, how do I make the most of my time here in Australia and not go away with my tail between my legs, having wasted 3 years of my life. First mistake I made, and it's one that I would say 90% of working holiday makers come over here and make, and that's to have absolutely no plan and no goal when you come over here for the first time. I remember 2 years ago nearly now, sitting in my bedroom at home thinking, I just want to go and see Australia and see what Australia is like, as if it's some new theme park that had been erected in the British countryside, and I'd be able to get around the whole country within a couple of days, fully understand the culture, and then leave no biggie. But the reality of when I came was that I arrived, I was living in a hostel, and I just figured that I needed a job. Already I could kind of feel the time wasting away, and a lot of the people around me felt exactly the same way. So, for example, I have a friend who came over here with a goal that was not really much bigger than, I'm gonna buy a car, I'm gonna drive around most of the country, and I'm gonna work in little regional spots and in cities wherever I can to make money to see the whole country. It's a pretty basic idea, but it gave them an overarching through line to their time in Australia that meant that when they'd finished, they ticked off a bunch of checklists and could leave feeling satisfied. I meanwhile just sort of ambled around in a hostel for 2 months and then got an office job and then did that for a year and a half. And on that topic, point 2, work and work-life balance. So when you come to Australia, you are probably going to feel exactly the same way as me and a lot of other people who move over here, and that is incredibly scared about the prospect of not being able to find a job and not being able to earn any money. But I do think that the worst thing you can do is get into full-time employment immediately. I know there'll be people out there who think to themselves, well, hey, Will, I need a job so that I can buy food so I don't actually starve to death. Don't know if you're familiar with the concept. And I say to you, yes, that is correct. You've established how the world works. However, you should come to Australia with a certain amount of money in your back pocket just to keep you going while you figure out where it is you want to be and what it is you want to do and what you want to get ultimately out of Australia. I know some people in the hostel I first stayed at who came to Australia with about $1,000 in savings, and for context, a hostel bed in a hostel is around $350 per week. So you've not even got a month of savings for rent and rent alone in your back pocket. Have a good amount of savings so that you don't need to get a job straight off the bat. And the reason I say this is because from my experience, I was terrified about not having a job. So within 3 days of having landed, I got my first job. There's these charity fundraising jobs where essentially you're going out to a shopping centre, standing with a little booth and a few other probably English people, and stopping people in the shopping centre or stopping people in the street and saying, hey, would you like to make a donation to XYZ charity? And people will tell you to promptly f*** off. I got a job doing this pretty much immediately, because if you have 2 legs and a mouth, you can get that job. So I quit my job after 4 days and went back to being unemployed and living in my hostel. After a couple of weeks, I got wind of another job that I might be able to get, which was in a tech company doing sales. And in terms of office life, it's a lot more conducive to having a good work-life balance. And ultimately, I got that job. But it meant that most of my energy and attention was focused on the job. And ultimately, I hadn't really come to Australia to get a career job. And on top of this, it really did just make me feel like I hadn't moved away from home. A couple of years back, I'd been doing a tech sales role in Manchester, and Melbourne, Manchester, 2 tech sales roles, I kind of felt like I wasn't getting the most out of Australia. I was just doing the same thing that I had back in the UK and wasn't getting to live the true blue Aussie lifestyle, as it was. As an aside as well, Melbourne and Manchester are very, very similar cities. They both have an exceptional tram network, a great cultural scene, and begin with the letter M. Another thing as well about working a full-time job is it really does limit your ability to explore and travel around the country, because you have to use annual leave, and most people who haven't come here wouldn't know this, but your annual leave accrues instead of you being given, 30 days of annual leave. The annual leave accrues instead of you being given it, so you actually have to wait for many months before you build up enough time to actually take the time off and go on a nice holiday and explore around. But the point is ultimately that you're more bound to the place that you live because you have a job, and so you can't make the most of traveling around the country. Moving on, point 3, don't live in a hostel for too long, but definitely do live in a hostel. So when I first got to Melbourne, I made my way immediately to a hostel. I checked in, and then I did not check out of that hostel for I think 6 or 7 weeks. And the reason I did this, and you'll find many other people who say this, is that you don't want to move out of your hostel where you can just book day by day if you so wanted to and sign a potentially year-long lease in a house or a share house, is because you don't have a job, and so you don't know if you're going to be able to pay the bills, and you don't want to get locked into a contract. Absolute bollocks. You can sign up for a house and leave whenever you want. It might be somewhat difficult, but you can actually do it. Failing that, you can go on Facebook. There's a million different groups. Fairy Floss is top of mind for Melbourne, but you can go on Facebook and you can sublet a room for a month or 2 months while someone goes off and travels around Australia or goes to Vietnam while you get on your feet and you look for a job. Being in this hostel was fantastic initially because it allowed me to make friends, build a network, and not feel so alone in what I was doing, because I was surrounded by tens and tens and tens of other people who were looking for jobs and trying to make a go of it in Australia and see what it's like with no goal or plan whatsoever. However, the big detraction from this is it's so hard to live a normal life in a hostel. You're surrounded by perpetual drinking and drug use. Ultimately, you're never going to get a good night's sleep. And if you're trying to save money, you're going to be in the biggest dorm possible. So I slept in a 12-bed dorm and was paying $350 for a bed in a 12-bed dorm where people would come in at all hours of the night, drunk, high as a kite, and get into bed or make noise, whatever, and they're allowed to because it's a hostel and it's a shared space, and that's kind of what you've got to expect. However, I noticed my mental health just go down, 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 down the entire time I was there until I could move out. So yeah, don't stay in a hostel for too long. I mean, Jesus, there were some people in that hostel who had been staying there for 6 months to a year. There was one guy who'd been living there for years, but I think there might have been something else going on with him. Try and set time limits on your hostel experience, make your friends, and get out. Point number 4, and this is going to be a pretty short one, but I think it's quite important. When I first came to Australia, I was exhausted from the 24-hour flight. I came to Melbourne and I was, wowed by the city. There's a tall building or 2 in the CBD, cool suburbs, nice coffee. But I really do wish now that I'd taken the initiative and after a week or 2 of being here, flown to Perth, Sydney, Brisbane, Darwin, anywhere else, one of the big metropolitan zones, had a look around to see if it was more my style. Because after I quit my job, I realized with nothing tying me to Melbourne, I don't actually really like the place that much, and it's not particularly aligned to what I want as a human being. Nothing wrong with Melbourne. I mean, it's a pretty C+ grade city, which will get me flack in the comments, I imagine, from die-hard Melburnians. But I don't drink, I don't go out for food that often. I like cultural stuff, and not so much that I'm going to move to a city for it. I prefer nature, going running, trail running, being with trees. And you can do that if you get out of the city in a car. Ultimately, it's a very urban environment, and it's catered to people who want to do things in an urban environment. And that brings me around to my 5th point. I would say as soon as you can and you're financially stable enough, you should buy a car. Doesn't matter what the car is, it can be an old banger, but you need a car to make the most of Australia, wherever you're living. Even if you don't want to do the whole driving around the entirety of Australia, if you have a car and a full-time job, on the weekends, you can drive to any number of beautiful natural environments. If I'm thinking about Melbourne, within an hour, I've got Werribee Gorge, I've got the Grampians National Park, I've got Wilson's Promontory. Some of these are closer, some of these are slightly further away. But critically, without a car, you're not going to be able to get there. You're just going to be riding backwards and forwards on the 96 tram all day, picking fluff out of your bumhole. And my final point, which is point 6. I didn't even number these. 3, 4, 5. I didn't number them. Luckily for me, I can count. This is a huge thing and potentially one of the most important parts of your experience in Australia. When I first came to Australia, as I said, I lived in a hostel, made lots of friends there, but ultimately who stays in hostels? It's foreigners, dirty foreigners like myself, people on working holiday visas or indeed tourists. And so my social network ended up just being working holiday makers. I met lots of English, Scottish, Irish, Welsh people. I met people from all over Europe. I met more Danish people here in Australia than I ever have in the rest of my life. However, I critically did not meet any Australian people. Hello, it's me editing the video. What I mean here is I meet Australians all the time because I live in Australia. I mean meet in a context where I can then make friends with them, not just on the street or in the line at a supermarket or something. Okay, back to the video. Unfortunately, the main composition of my social network is working holiday makers. And I think the problem there is, although it's very attractive to sort of have an entire network of people who are in the same boat as you, by the nature of them being in the same boat as you, being working holiday makers, they will leave. They will leave you, and no matter how much you beg and plead, they will leave you. Because working holiday makers, you know, we work in cycles. Whether you're staying for 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, or the 3 full years of your English, you have to leave eventually. What happens is you go from being at the absolute peak of your social career, surrounded by hundreds of friends. Maybe not me, I didn't have hundreds of friends, I had some friends. But you go from having this huge social network and then 6 months later people decide, you know, I'm kind of done with living in Melbourne, gonna move to a different city, I'm done with Australia, my visa's rolling over, I don't feel like I'm getting the most out of the place, so I'm off. So you can go from being, you know, at one point with loads of friends, everybody, when you walk down the street, people are shaking your hand like you are the Don in 1930s Sicily. To 6 months later, suddenly you only have 2 friends left because everybody just happened to leave at the same time. Pretty much, yeah, as I was going towards September last year, I just noticed people dropping off. The amount of leaving parties I was going to in August was multitudinous. It was unbearable. I couldn't stop crying. Not really. Eventually you just come completely desensitized to the whole experience, which is sad. I would say try and make some Australian friends. You can do that by joining clubs. You know, if I was going to do it again, I'd probably join running clubs because I enjoy running. I did do improv comedy workshops and met a few people through that, but unfortunately those workshops were paid and I didn't really want to keep spending a couple of $100 per term just to sort of rock up and make a few silly jokes and talk to people. Well, if I wanted to pay people to be my friend, then by gum, I would ask Elon Musk for a few tips. Ha! Got you, Elon. Anyway, those are a few of the countless mistakes I have made in my life. If you have any that you made moving to Australia, please leave them in the comments, or indeed if you have any more questions about what it's like to live in Australia, then yeah, again, leave them in the comments. That's it from me. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe. Goodbye.